Hello, my name is A.J. Kucher. I'm with the Spencer Opal Mines. Today we're going to go over stone selection. I have tons and tons and tons of opal to cut and to work, and the method we use for stone selection, different stones worldwide cut in different ways. Example, agate and many other solid stones such as jasper, they have no real up, down, sideways direction. They're just a rock. Our opal is formed in geodes with a layered structure of multiple bands. Of these bands, they are colored across the top of the plate. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The colored bands that go all the way across the plate. This one here also. To show the various colors and patterns of each band, we cut across the horizontal width of the band. You can see them from the side, but we cut it horizontally. This leaves a narrow band with a wide width where the color is. All bands are different from individual opal stone to opal stone in thickness and often within the stone itself, such as this band. This stone has a number of bands that are fairly thick. This stone has a multitude of bands that are fairly thin. How to cut them? We have bands that are paper thin, such as this, up to bands that are 1 inch thick. And when you look at the color, tremendous colors and the thickness of the stone itself. In stone selections of opal, a person should evaluate their skills to the stone itself. Thick bands are easier to cut across, but they're harder to come by because I like cutting them myself. So they're going to be harder to come by. A thin band stone with multiple bands are easier to cut, and you cut because you can see it and you cut straight down across it. They are really nice because they often come up with a two-sided stone. Because the bands are too close together to cut apart, you would just put one band on top and one band on the bottom. We call these flat solids, and a lot of those are double-sided. So you'll have the color band from one and the color band from the other, and they're both going to be totally different in color and the pattern. That's what separates each opal stone out, is the different color combinations in it and the pattern that forms these color combinations. Ask yourself, what purpose are you cutting the stone for? Is it going to make jewelry? Is that your ultimate end goal? Are you going to take a large specimen and cut it into smaller pieces for a multitude of stones that are similar, such as a cluster group that you want to make? Or do you want to make a specimen out of it? One thing about a specimen, if you cut a nice specimen and polish it all up and finish it like this, at a later time you can always come back and make smaller stones. Make for various, like say a bracelet, a pendant, and a ring, all matching from the same piece. So we recommend do specimens first. Once you learn to do the specimens and come up with a really good quality, you could always cut that further down or go on to the next stone that's going to be cutting for specific purpose, like jewelry. If you're facing the stones, that's another thing that you could do with them to show the various bands of color, such as this stone or this one. These have both been faced. You just take and trim the vertical edge, and that gives you the determination of how you're going to cut the stone. We call it stone's talking to you. It tells you what it can do. When you're doing this, the first thing you do is you look for fractures, breaks, or healed lines. This stone here is very representative of all. This brown lines that you see, and we'll do a close-up on this, the brown lines are healed lines from earthquakes or breaks millions of years ago. On the far side are a couple of smaller lines that are from when we dug the stone and finished it up. The vibration from the saws or the hammering had broken the little edges. When you cut this, those are the pieces that might come off, and that's what you have to be careful of. If they do come off while you're cutting on the deck, scrape them off to the side. Don't try to push over top of them. Back it out and take those pieces, put them into one of the bowls that you're going to have on the side. They can interfere not only with the saw, with the stone as it's being cut by offsetting it. They can bend the blade and then the blade's useless, or they can shoot off of there at a high rate of speed. For safety, anytime you get chips or bits on there, scrape those off. The saw is turning at a minimum to get a good straight cut at 1750 RPMs. Put all those little chips in the bowls that you have. We recommend for cutting the saw itself, which there are many wonderful lapidary businesses that produce these saws, and they last for many, many years, and they are expensive. That's the drawback, but we don't recommend that you have homemade items, homemade things, because safety-wise, they just don't meet the requirements that a person would need, that commercial cutters have. We recommend a 6-inch saw. That cuts just about everything that you need to cut. That'll cut most stones and give a 3-inch cut. You're going to have a 3-inch cut. For a stone that's 4 or 5 inches across, you're going to do a double cut. You're going to cut it and then roll it over and cut it from the other side. So you get a double cut on these. Anything bigger than a 4 or 5 inch stone, you want to do on a 8-inch, a 10-inch, or a 12-inch saw. We have a larger saw. We use a larger saw only to reduce the stone down to a more manageable size. If it's much bigger than a 6-inch saw, the stone's sometimes pretty hard to handle because it's a lot heavier. Larger saws we've found on our 8, 10s, and 12s have a minimum of a 32-inch thick saw blade, because then they don't bend on you, and that's one of the big problems. Once the saw blade bends for some reason, you have to dispose of it because the vibration will be way too much for the saw to give you a good straight cut. You want a straight cut. And now you are ready to cut. You've made your stone selection. You know where you're going to cut it, what you're going to do. Make sure you have plenty of light directed at the saw deck. You want it, we recommend and use generally 2 lights, one from each side of the deck, so that you get a good, clean, clear look down the deck. Use a comfortable chair. A lot of people like to stand, but you don't have that much control, where if you're sitting in a chair, put both feet flat on the floor and set your saw up to where in your height, so that you could slide straight in and straight out from that saw. You want to be able to look down the saw and see where the cut is going, right down the center. That's where you would wear your loops so that you could see it up real close as it cuts. To get an accurate cut, push all the way through the saw. This is 2 pieces that I've cut already, and it shows you. You just slide right straight down the center to the other side and then separate them. As a tip, and this is something that we learned over many years and that's important, we will take a black marker such as this, a Sharpie, and we will put a line on our piece to cut like this. This is where our cut's going to go. We're going to run that down this line. As you can see, as you're cutting and you're looking down your saw blade, you're going to push straight down on top of that black line, because on the far side over here, you can't see that because your piece is being cut like this. So push it through halfway, bring it back, roll it over, and see if you are still on your little black line. That tells you that you're cutting straight. If you're off your black line, because you could have it curved and turned in many directions, and the saw will follow wherever you push it. So if you're right-handed, sometimes you push it to the left. Left-handed people push it to the right. Little tips like that, if you stay on the line, you don't have any problem. Until you learn to cut very well, if you cut very, very good, then you probably won't need to put those lines, but I still put them on after 30 years of cutting. Especially on a round geode, because you get an optical illusion and you will cut off at an angle a lot of times. Now that you have the stone in halves, 2 halves, put them in the bowls for the next step. The opal stone with the color goes in one. The other material, that's your cutoff material, save it, because you can make pewter items out of it. There's many things that you can do to it. Sometimes you can make spheres. This one here, I'm going to cut this piece off down through here and make another stone. This has color to it. So that'll be another stone. It's a freebie for me, but you put that in another bowl. All the chips, everything off your saw, put into a bowl, because you could always tumble them and make nice tumble stones to put in planters, or if they turn out exceptionally nice, you can make jewelry out of them, make beads, make various other items. The last thing you do as you're finished cutting, the very last thing you do, and this is important, you dump out all of your water and clean your saws, clean your equipment so that it's ready for the next time. Otherwise, everything rusts and everything, and then you can't do it. Clean it all up. And because next you go on to grinding. That's going to be fun. Next time.